Also online with us this morning, we have Mr. James Beers. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I've read, obviously, a bunch of the articles, and we know the results that we've seen over the period of time. The biggest question that I have, and I know that it's most interesting here for us here in Arizona, is we know that there's a massive push to put big numbers of Mexican gray wolves on the ground. They're wanting to change it from the experimental 10J status to endangered species status, and they want them all across the state instead of the limited range that we have now. One of the things that I have said in the past is, and I noted that you said it as well, is that the groundswell of lack of support has to come from those communities that have them and that are most affected. We know the urban people who are, shall we say, Disneyfied. They want to see them all over the place as long as it's not in their backyard. And your express comments have always been that if you start from the groundswell of support and have only the local communities, the counties, those areas most affected, and how they can perhaps prevent the massive inclusion of Mexican gray wolves coming in. And I'm going to let you take over at that.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me that you called me from Arizona to talk about this subject, because Arizona and New Mexico, back in 2004, there was a coalition, it's still there, of Arizona, New Mexico counties, really formed around, between the two states and along the border, formed around the concept of what do we, who are putting up with these wolves, what can we do together? So you had this unique in American society today, group of counties from two states, acting in one sense like they were not a state, if you will, but a large community that was going to try to solve their own problems because neither of their states would stand up for them.
Correct.
So that put aside now, and we see what's happened with wolves since 2004 when I came down there to get that award and spoke to a bunch of people down there. We see that the wolves have greatly increased in the north and around the Great Lakes, and people are all complaining in the cities, like you say, that, they're going to kill the alpha wolves, they can't, this pack has got integrity, they shouldn't be able to trap them, they shouldn't be able to do this to them, and they're taking too many, blah, 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 all this stuff. And they also the stuff about, maybe, which we see more and more each day now, maybe they shouldn't have cattle out there where the wolves are, maybe they shouldn't have sheep, maybe they shouldn't own dogs out there. Well, they should learn to keep their kids out there in wolf country. And with that said, we see that Utah and Colorado are still without wolves, and you guys have had them for a while and have been fighting about it, and it's not going too well. So they've got this big push on right now in the north to say, we're going to return management of these wolves to the state. Aren't we good people? And aren't you lucky? So the state fish and game departments have got to pick up the costs of not only compensation, but reporting on these wolves, trying to count them, which is all but impossible, and go through court cases and answer all of the complaints from their urban areas and all of this about the wolves. It's an enormous burden on the state with no real return, other than for everybody to say, look, what a good job the federal government put these things here. It's once again like it was before Columbus arrived, and the state takes care of it. We return management. They've got well, they don't. They don't have management at all. But that said, you've got that big middle area, Colorado and Utah, that they want to get the wolves into so that they can link up with Arizona and New Mexico. And the way you do that is to stuff a lot more in a lot broader area in Arizona and New Mexico. That's what they're up to. Just like they're cooperatively working with Mexico right now to release some wolves in Mexico. Aren't we wonderful? We're going broke up here, and we're sending people down there and money down to Mexico with our folks to put wolves just south of the Big Bend down there, where they're not going to have much food, and the people, despite all of the highfalutin stuff about how the rural Mexicans love wolves, do not love wolves. And the wolves are going to move up into Texas, just like the Arizona-New Mexico wolf movement is intended to move up into Utah and Colorado and sort of take over the whole West as they kind of push into Oregon now in Washington. And they've been showing up, roaming into Northern California. And from all of those states, they're going to tumble out into the Black Hills. They're going to tumble into the Sand Hills, western Kansas, and they're going to learn, just like coyotes did,
how to survive.
live closer and closer to people. This nonsense about, they never lived here, they aren't going to move there, that's crazy. They're just like your dog in your house. They'll do what they got to do as their numbers increase.
Hey, Jim, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
One of the things we know now is that, of course, these are extremely mobile animals that can go hundreds of miles when they face that inclination, whether it's food or searching for a mate. These are extremely mobile animals. When you talked to me the other day, we mentioned the fact that the county governments need to band together very strongly. We have to have a strong county board of supervisors, then we have to have a whole group of counties that agree to it, and from those counties we have to have the state. Now, in 2004, we were under what I believe was the Janet Napolitano regime, who was a strong Democrat, an advocate of shall we say, unsecure borders in Arizona and bringing in all the wildlife, and the environmentalists absolutely adored her. We've got Governor Jan Brewer now, who is staunchly opposed to any more massive reintroductions and who is, quite frankly, a conservative Republican. Do you think we have an opportunity, if we base our strong support and having the rejection of changing it from a 10J status to endangered species?
You bet I do. And the way to do that is not to go to the 10J meetings and follow all of the little nooks and crannies that they keep putting in your way, because the federal government's working hand in hand with the Humane Society, Center for Biological Diversity, and most of the state fish and game departments, and they're not working in your best interest. And I would take one little exception with one word you use, which we need unified county opposition. I think what you need, what New Mexico needs, and what every state that's facing this issue needs, is authority from the state to recognize county authority or jurisdiction over controlling canids within the county. Now, canids includes coyotes, wolves, dogs, whatever, that are problem animals. And let the voters within the county, whether they all want to do it or a majority want to do it, let them have the authority, if they want to exercise it, of controlling the presence, the behavior, the impacts of wolves within their jurisdiction. I often use the example of deer hunting in the state of Virginia, where I lived for quite a few years when I worked in Washington. And the counties are all different. I mean, you look at the deer hunting map there, and it's a riot of colors. And one county allows dogs, another one doesn't. One county allows shotguns with buckshot, another one not. Another one says you can have a 4-week season, another one says a 3-day season. One says you can take a deer a day, the other says only one a year. And all of this stuff. But what it does, once you get familiar with it, it allows the local county or local communities to make decisions about the numbers of deer and the impacts of deer and the way they're hunted within the county. For instance, a county that for years near the Chesapeake Bay might be a very, very thick wooded county, and they've used dogs since the Civil War. And you get a lot of retirees moving in there, and everybody looks around and says, I don't like seeing those dogs run through my yard after these deer, and these guys standing along the road, blah, 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 blah. And then they can get it changed. They can say, well, no longer in our county will we use dogs. The same with rifles.
So they have that ability on a county-by-county basis. One of the things that we have been toying with here in Arizona, and this is a question that you specifically might have a good response to. We know that the animals that we currently have are labeled 10J, non-essential, experimental. And they want a change to basically have anything that gets out of that area become endangered species. Also, they want to have the whole of the state declared as an endangered species. Our thought here, as a rebuttal to that proposition, is to have the whole state declared as a 10J non-essential experimental with a very limited number of the 100 that we agreed to more than 15 years ago. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you have to do that, simultaneously with looking carefully at the authority that your elected county officials have got in the various counties, and the way they word the sheriff's authority, and the way that they word our county superintendent or county commissioner's authority. And you've got to establish that they're going to have a say in this legally within the county, within the state. And that the state then does or does not do what you just talked about, making the whole area a 10J area, or simply puts their foot down. And you you approach the federal government exactly like they put the wolves in there to begin with raw political power. You're not going to get anywhere with I don't think, now, honestly, I mean, I'm being very blunt about this, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with playing their games with their wording of, oh, that's essential, but we've got these targets and we've got the area here, and when they get out, we're going to make them endangered over there. And they just keep changing that and sitting down with the academics that they get research from, and those evil, and that's the right word, lobbyists in Washington that want them in there at all costs. You've got to have a strong political opposition to a strong political force. Otherwise, it's just going to continue like it has all over the country, that they just keep rolling over this state, rolling over that state over there, and rolling over the cattlemen, and rolling over the elk hunters and the moose hunters, and lying through their teeth, and the state backing them up, state bureaucrats backing them up. But I think it's essential, I really do, that the state have a strong political base, if you will, to say, look, our elected local officials, our county commissioners and sheriffs in these 8 counties or 18 counties want to control any wolves that are in here, and if you put them in here, they're authorized to do whatever they need to do, just like they do with problem dogs. They're going to pick them up, and you don't get them back, whoever owns them, unless you come in within 3 days to claim them, and then you've got to pay a fine, even if you're a federal government. You've got to pay for their upkeep, and they're going to be marked in such a way that they will be killed the next time they're doing what they were picked up for right now. There's no difference between a wolf in your yard and a little pack of pit bulls out there that you don't know where they came from. They're a danger to people, they're a danger to your animals, your dog, your livestock. They're a danger to game animals. And you're going to say that you're going to kill them the next time that happens, and they're authorized, the counties are authorized to delegate that out. And you're also going to have within your counties the authority for the county commissioners, the sheriff, to say, look, you've got wolves on that property over, even if it's the federal government's Forest Service property. The only place where they can't do that is Yellowstone. All these other places, the federal government is a landowner, just like everybody else. The fact that they've parlayed this business about, well, we don't pay taxes, so we're so special, we're like Ted Turner or something, is nonsense to let them get away with that. If you're going to control wolves, and you say, look, we've had problems in this county with wolves in yards and killing cattle, and they're coming out of your place over there, and we want you to control those wolves in there, or we're going to come in and do it for you. And if the person that has that property won't let this county on there, the county just forces their way in, does the control work, just like they would with wild dogs or weeds. The county can go in there and control them and then say, look, we're billing you for it, and if you don't pay it, we're putting a lien on this property. Now, that's the kind of political power that's got to be in place if you're going to stand up to them and say, listen, we're not just out here like a bunch of little baby birds with our mouth open waiting for some federal buzzard to come over and stuff something in it.
You know, that's a good analogy, and I think that if we take a vote, obviously you know that the most liberal areas are always going to be urban dwellers. They have absolutely no concept of what really goes on in the land because they spend their lives sitting in cities. We also know that the Humane Society, the Center for Biological Diversity, and the Sierra Club are extremely wealthy organizations that can paint any picture that they want to that is not based in reality. And their main claim to fame is, quote, 1, a healthy ecosystem, and number 2, a majority of the public wants to see more wolves. He who phrases the question wins the debate.
Yep.
How do we, I think that from what you're saying, if we say there's 12 counties in Arizona, and out of the 12 counties, Maricopa, as a good example, which is the urban legend here. If Maricopa and, say, Coconino say they want to have wolves, and all the rest of the state says they don't, then we're going to have to transplant them only or have the experimental area in Maricopa County. Does that sound right?
That's correct. When they step into the county where they say, look, we've had a lot of problems here. We don't want any more elk killed and are being killed. We want to protect our cattle. We don't want our kids sitting in cages waiting for school buses. So when we see them doing that, these wolves, we're gonna take measures just like we would with any other wild dog. We're gonna let you shoot coyotes, at any time you see them with a problem 24/7. But dogs that are run loose and or wolf-like animals, they get picked up. And if these other counties, that whatever your urban counties are, they can exercise their authority and have wolves there. That's fine. That's like the federal government wants them in Yellowstone, so all the tourists can go out there and whatever.
By the way, you and I talked about this too, and that is that Yellowstone was such a unique population of wildlife, and I've seen documentaries now where they claim that the Yellowstone elk herd is, quote, in a biologically balanced and a more, what did they call it? It was a healthy herd now. And my question is, how do you go from, in the environmental impact statement, the FEIS, which the federal government, Fish and Wildlife Services put out, they claim that no less than 5% nor more than 30% of the Yellowstone herd would become food for the gray wolves. We both know that over 80% of that herd has been decimated already, and it's going to go down because those mature animals that have lived are now getting to the point where they're in the non-calving era. They're too old. A lot of those cows are getting way too old.
Those were lies to begin with, and anybody that accepts listening to these lies they would have said the same thing if there was only 2 elk left in there. They'd say, "Oh my gosh, the songbirds have just loved the willows along the streams, and now suddenly there's shade for the trout, and they don't want anybody in there catching those trout." But all of a sudden they're just, we're going to have shade for the trout and all this. It's nonsense. And they would say that stuff and generate whatever kind of propaganda is needed. These people, honest to God, and I guess I'm just a nasty person for saying this, they're no different than a propagandist for the Stalin people or for Hitler or the rest of them. Whatever's going on, they're going to spin it so that it makes everybody say, well, gosh, the people in charge are doing the best they can, and this is certainly better than it used to be, isn't it? They're spinning all this stuff, and it's lies. It's just plain lies, and I'm not going to... For a long time, you try to be polite and say, well, they just misinformation. We'll explain it to them, blah, 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 blah. But, you could look at the collapse of the Lolo elk herd up in Idaho.
Yeah.
And you could look at the Yellowstone herd and see what's happened. Just like you can look at Minnesota moose. They just closed the Minnesota moose season, probably forever. For the last 20 years, as the number on the graph of wolves go up and up and up and up, the moose population goes down and down and down. Now we can't even hunt them anymore here. And it used to be a very valuable license once in a lifetime and all this kind of stuff, and they're gone. And the bureaucrats are still getting money here in Minnesota from the federal government and from the state, both of which are broke, to go out there and put tags and collars and satellite monitor and run big articles in the paper. Just read one the other day. Oh, this is because of global warming.
And, that's it. Global warming has taken out the moose.
The moose have got a lot of ticks on them, and there's still a lot more that we got to do research on, because all of the people they hire in the agencies, the federal and state agencies anymore, along with all the other anti-hunting and that kind of stuff, is just in their genes right from the beginning. I guess they're born with it. The idea that, predation is just never that serious, and it's wonderful, and it's natural. That's what went on before Columbus got here. That must be good. And they will never, ever admit to it or look at it honestly. You look at all these articles and research papers and everything else, and the perspective is there right from the first word. That, of course we all know that, wolves don't do this, or mountain lions don't do that.
We know what they do.
Jim, one of the things I heard you say, and I'm really intrigued by it, is that the county involvement is critical in this. Having the local people that are affected by these wolves have a say in what's done. And to me, that's the missing component in this whole thing, is the fact that you have our urban cities like Tucson and Phoenix dictating to the rest of the state, and of course the environmentalists and the extremists playing to those cities in order to drag them along and create this aura of support for the wolf. Well, it's great to support something when it's in somebody else's backyard. You don't care, really.
Just real quickly, that's exactly how they get them into Washington. Seattle wants them. They get them into Oregon. Portland wants them. They get them into Montana, and Billings and Missoula want them. In Minnesota, the Twin Cities want them. Over in Michigan, it's Grand Rapids that wants them. It's going on all over the country.
Well, for me, that's the very thing that we have to avoid. We have to have our local people involved in this process. And to me, it seems like if we created a 10J state, basically making them non-essential experimental, and then with a component of the counties involved, working with the agencies we have a natural resource council here that's just getting off the ground, and it involves all of our state agencies, and they're working with the counties. This could be a natural place for us to exercise some control and direction for the program that could benefit everybody and keep the wolf numbers in check and management where we can accept it.
I think you're 100% right, but you got to have that local control element put together and working, because if you're just working on the other end of it while you're tinkering with the county end of it, they're going to run over you just like the Germans going into Russia. I mean, just wham, bam, and all of a sudden there you are.
Jim, one of the things I was curious about, and obviously you had to take a 3-year sabbatical. Basically, you were told to stay home, get paid for 3 years, shut your mouth, don't say a word to anybody.
Yeah, that's correct. When all that happened, I mean, a lot of things stunned me. Like the state game and fish directors never asked for the money, the millions of dollars stolen from their programs to be replaced.
Were they afraid to ask for it back?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they were going to. What are they going to do about future grants for endangered species, or a job that might come available if they want, or an after-retirement position that they can give them to give them a little work to do? And what about Bass Pro picking them up if they were antagonizing all the federal people? Yeah, I mean, you're darn right they were afraid. And their organization was run by a retired chief of the Forest Service, and you don't get to be chief of the Forest Service and that by standing out. And I'm not knocking the guy, just saying the guys that they put in charge for their influence are the same guys who get where they get in the federal government and other big jobs by getting along with everybody and schmoozing everybody and not ticking anybody off. But the thing that I think I'd like to just mention to your listeners, I was just stunned. After they had sent me home for 10 months, and my lawyer said, look, they want to give you a big cash settlement. I think we got to do this. This is the only way out of this. And I talked to my wife. She said, yeah, we'll do it. I come in to sit down with this, and they offered me 3 large payments of money over and above my salary and my retirement and everything. And they were going to give it to me in 1-year installments. And I had to sign a piece of paper. Now, that money that I was getting was your tax money. That had nothing to do with wildlife or anything else. It was just pure money out of the Treasury. They give it to me in 3 installments saying, and I had to sign a piece of paper, that if I speak or write anything, one word, about the circumstances of my separation from the federal government, I would immediately have to repay all of it. So for 3 years, that was what was in there, I could not say or write a word about this. Now think about this. Aside from me saying, well, that's not right and all this stuff, you guys, I'm talking about elk hunters and fishermen and ranchers and dog owners and the rest of you that might have said, what are they doing in there? What happened to that guy that testified about all that money they stole? They bribed me with your tax money to not say a word to a newspaper, to any interested group, not that they were interested, the Ducks Unlimited, that they all ran for cover, the Cattlemen's Association, the Dog Owners Association, anybody that was interested in, what's the deal here? Did they really steal money? How come the states didn't ask for it back? I never got to answer those questions because they all figured that by 3 years, 3 years later, nobody would remember this. It'd be like, why did we invade Kuwait or something? Like, who cares?
It's not news anymore if it's after the fact so far.
Exactly. But, I was just absolutely appalled at that. And that's going on right now, I'm sure. We don't want you to say anything. We in the government, come here, we're going to give you all this money, and if you say anything about this for 3 years, oh, Buster, we're going to get you.
Now, that was
it's crazy.
That was back in 98, 99, and 2000,
exactly.
Right? Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
What are you doing these days?
I write and speak. I go around the country a lot speaking, and I write, and I have a lot of people call me and write me and ask me for help, and I give them all the help I can. And
yeah, Pete and I were up in Springerville in August when you were up there giving your talk. Both of us were in attendance on that, and we also watched. We didn't realize it at the time, but we were part of the David Spady film, "Wolves in Government Clothing."
Yep.
You watched that, correct?
Yes, I did. He sent me a copy of it here about a week ago, and I watched it, and wrote him a real nice little email telling him I thought it was great, and thought he did a good job on it. So.
Well, I wish you continued success in what you're doing, James, and obviously I would love to chat with you on a frequent basis as this, and I'll call it what it is. It's a war. We're going to go to war on wolves, and we're going to go to wolves in Arizona. Not only in Arizona, but New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado, because I think we're the last bastion that might be able to dig our heels in and say no.
Yep, that's correct.
Jim,
I wish you all the luck in the world.
Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We all do, and thank you so much.
You bet. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, Pete. That was James Beers.
Well, I always appreciate his frankness. In this age of political correctness, when things are often left unsaid or manipulated and said in a different way, I appreciate the fact that Jim called it like he saw it. And we know how big that problem was. We know how that problem still is, how big it is. And I just appreciate the fact that he's out there. People think that he's a radical. Well, I'm a radical right along with him, because I fear a government that doesn't tell me the truth and manipulates things behind the scene and works with other organizations clandestinely to shape our future. That's not right. That's not American. That's not the public process.
And part of it, too, is yes, he accepted staying where he was and not saying a word for 3 years. But if he hadn't accepted that, they would have ruined him. They would have trapped him. They would have made it so that he, who paid all those years, I mean, he was with the Fish and Wildlife Service for over 25 years. He was right at the age of retirement. He would have lost everything. So it wasn't a matter of him just taking extra gain. He would have lost everything if he hadn't bought what they put down on paper for him.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And it's a sad state of affairs when we find that the infiltration into fish and wildlife is more by people who have the disconnect and want to see no human. I remember one of the commissioners who we disagreed with on many occasions, Jennifer Martin, who always said utility fosters use. And that was her big claim to fame. And I'll always remember that from her. And that was basically saying is that if you have the opportunity on the land for people to recreate, whether it be hunting, whether it be horseback riding, whether it be quad riding, in limited sets where everybody can get along, that's the best use of this resource that we have in the United States. And these are public lands that we've paid for forever. What we have now is less than 10% of the population trying to tell all of us that we cannot do what we want to do on land that we've already paid for.
Understood.
So my question is, what do we do now?
I think that Pete and certainly Jim Beers and myself are all on the same page in that, and that is that each of the county governments needs to stand tall. They need to really do that, and I don't care what Maricopa County does, and I don't care what Pima County does. We'll put them in Pima County, right in Congressman Grijalva's backyard, and let him see how he likes having wolves there.
Johnny, one of the things that I think is an important component of all this is the fact we've talked about the state wolf management plan, the fact that the state develops its own, and I know that's in the works. But I think also what I've heard here this morning and what I really agree with is the fact that the political side of that has to be involved. We need the counties involved. We need direction from our governor. We need participation so that we can make it a management plan that works for the wolves and, more importantly, works for everybody that's here.
Me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and chew.